This game is a masterpiece by Akiba Rubinstein, showcasing his exceptional positional understanding and tactical brilliance. White's passive play and inaccuracies in the opening allowed Black to seize the initiative and launch a devastating attack on the king's side. The final combination, featuring the sacrifices of queen and rook, is one of the most beautiful in chess history. White opens with the queen's pawn opening, aiming for a solid and flexible pawn structure. This move controls the center and prepares for potential development of the c1 bishop and the knight on f3. Black responds symmetrically, establishing a strong presence in the center and preparing to develop the light-squared bishop and knights. White develops the knight to its most natural square, controlling the e5 and g5 squares and preparing to castle. Black reinforces the d5 pawn and opens the diagonal for the c8 bishop. This move also prepares for the development of the f8 bishop to e7 or d6. White opts for a solid but somewhat passive approach, reinforcing the d4 pawn and opening the diagonal for the c1 bishop. However, this move blocks the c1 bishop's development, which could lead to a slower game. Black challenges White's central control by attacking the d4 pawn. This move aims to create tension in the center and open lines for Black's pieces. White strikes back in the center, aiming to undermine Black's d5 pawn and open the c-file for the rook. This move is typical in Queen's Gambit structures. Black develops the knight to a natural square, attacking the d4 pawn and preparing to support the c5 push. White develops the knight to c3, reinforcing the d5 square and preparing to support the c4 pawn. This move also prepares for potential pawn breaks like d for d5. Black completes the development of the kingside knight, maintaining pressure on the center and preparing to castle. White decides to release the central tension by capturing the c5 pawn. This move is somewhat premature, as it allows Black to regain the pawn with active piece play. Tartakower notes that a3 or bishop d3 would have been more consistent, maintaining the tension in the center. Black recaptures the pawn, developing the bishop to an active square where it exerts pressure on the e3 pawn and the king's side. White plays a cautious move, preventing Black's bishop from jumping to b4 and pinning the knight on c3. However, this move is somewhat slow and does not contribute to White's development. Black prepares to expand on the queen's side with b5, gaining space and preparing to develop the c8 bishop to b7. White pushes the b-pawn to gain space on the queen's side and challenge Black's bishop. However, this move weakens the c4 square and creates potential targets for Black. Black retreats the bishop to a more flexible square where it supports the e5 push and prepares to castle. White develops the bishop to b2, aiming to exert pressure on the long diagonal and support the central pawns. However, this move does not address the immediate need for kingside development. Black castles, ensuring the safety of the king. White places the queen on d2, intending to support the b4 pawn and potentially prepare queenside castling. However, this move is criticized by Schlechter and Tartakower as a loss of time. The queen is not well placed here and will soon need to relocate. C takes d5 or queen c2 would have been better alternatives. Black prepares to challenge White's center and create threats on the king's side. This move also supports the potential e5 push. White develops the bishop to d3, but this move is too slow and allows Black to gain the initiative. Schlechter suggests that c takes d5 would have been better, opening the center and activating White's pieces. Black captures the c4 pawn, opening the center and gaining space on the queen side. White recaptures the pawn, but the bishop is now exposed to black's advancing pawns. White retreats the bishop to d3, but this move further delays White's development and allows Black to seize the initiative. Black places the rook on the open d-file, increasing pressure on White's position and preparing to double rooks. White relocates the queen to e2, aiming to support the e4 push and connect the rooks. However, this move is too late to save White's position. Black develops the bishop to b7, exerting pressure on the long diagonal and preparing to launch an attack on the king's side. White finally castles, but the king is not entirely safe due to Black's active pieces. Black swings the knight to e5, a key central outpost. This move increases the pressure on White's position and prepares to launch a decisive attack. White exchanges the knight to relieve some of the pressure, but this move opens the diagonal for Black's bishop and weakens White's king side. Black recaptures the knight, maintaining control of the center and threatening to win a pawn with bishop takes h to check. White's next move provides against this, but loosens the kingside defenses. White pushes the f-pawn to drive Black's bishop back, but this move weakens the king's side and creates new targets for Black's pieces. Black retreats the bishop to c7, maintaining the threat of bishop b6 check and preparing to double rooks on the d-file. White pushes the e-pawn to gain space in the center, but this move further weakens the king's side and creates new weaknesses. Black doubles rooks on the c-file, increasing the pressure on White's position and preparing to launch a decisive attack. White pushes the e-pawn to e5, but this move is a critical mistake. It opens the diagonal for Black's bishop and weakens White's king side. Stockfish notes that this move drops the evaluation from -0.7 to -3.1, effectively losing the game. Black exploits the weakened diagonal, forcing White's king to move and creating new threats on the king's side. White moves the king to h1, avoiding the immediate threats but leaving the king's side vulnerable. Black brings the knight to g4, threatening to win material and launch a decisive attack on the king's side. White attempts to defend the king's side by placing the bishop on e4, but this move is insufficient to save the game. Black brings the queen to h4, threatening mate on h2 and increasing the pressure on White's position. White pushes the g-pawn to block the queen's attack, but this move further weakens the king's side and allows Black to launch a decisive combination. Even the alternative h3 proposed by Stockfish, parrying the mate, would lead to the following brilliant lines of play. Or this combination. Black sacrifices the queen to eliminate White's knight and open the diagonal for the bishop. This move is the beginning of a brilliant combination that leads to a forced win. Black sacrifices the rook again, forcing White's queen to capture and opening the diagonal for the bishop. Black brings the rook to h3, threatening mate on h2. White has no way to defend against the threat, and the game ends in a brilliant victory for Black.